Wow, we are live now.
We aren't live yet on Facebook.
We're not live yet on Facebook. Well,
Which is, okay. I think we are now.
good. Good. We're waiting for all of our live things to come on. I'm not checking YouTube yet. I'm just trusting that this is going to be there on YouTube. I'm going to open up the comments area. Oh, yeah, I can actually take a look at comments.
Okay. I don't see comments, but that's
all right. So I'm going to post a comment in the Circular Soul. Hello. Tell me if that shows up, because it is from the future.
Yes, it is.
Good.
This is odd. I don't see where it would be showing comments.
Oh, that's okay. So even in the future, we all babble before we talk about our topic when we go live. So because, technology is still kind of like, we want to try it out. We're a little skeptical still. We want to make sure that we're all up and running. But we're all up and running, so
yeah, we'll just go.
We're going.
Yeah.
So welcome to 2022, and we're going to look back to 2021. So as you know, Rita and I have been talking from the future for many years now. We talk from far in the future, months in the future, years in the future, and this is like just, I guess, for those viewing in, currently, it's a year in the future for them. We might be traveling back to this point, but we're going to do a recap from the future.
And Scott froze. Okay, there we go.
And we're back.
Yes.
I'm going to change to my wired internet.
All right. So because we want to just allow the possibility that any of us, anytime, can be in the future or the past. And I think we prove that to ourselves quite often with the past. And so we have decided to do that very consciously for the future. And we've done it long enough and seen enough things transpire over time that we have talked about, say, 2 years ago. And we've done that enough that we know it can be done. So that's what we're doing today. For people who are maybe concerned about what 2021 might bring us after experiencing 2020. And of course, it's not the year, it is humanity and what we choose. So let's choose good things.
Yes. And also we have, through this process, we've actually seen enough evidence to know that these processes bring about real results, real change. They actually are not as crazy as some people might think. We left that behind quite a while ago. And basically, we know that time is just a construct and that we're living many timelines right here and now. There's always just a here and now point. And if we can grab some things from the future or talk from the future to the past, we're actually just tapping into a timeline that already exists. And we don't necessarily have to worry about whether or not things are right, wrong. This is just an imaginative space and plane that is actually very real because we are just projecting ourselves to and from that place. So put on your quantum hats a little bit this time when we speak from the future to a past that hasn't already happened yet for some of you. So
that we know of.
That we know of. Because it's so fluid and because it's so abstract. Time being an imaginary construct.
And just to add just a little bit, kind of saying the same thing you just did, this might sound like wishful thinking. It might sound, it might sound imaginary, but we invite you to just allow for the possibility that it maybe is something that's really happening in a scientific way that can be mathematically proved. We just don't know how to do it yet. We know how to do the thing. We don't know how to prove it's a real thing.
Yeah, it's an individual process where evidence comes through for each individual.
Yeah.
So, and we have seen how in the past people can actually have multiple perspectives of a year, of a timeline. For us, 2020 was amazing. We will just say that because that year, 2020 was amazing because both of us kind of broke through creativity wise and started earning more money, and we actually saw so many gifts starting then, while much of the rest of the world maybe saw that as a time of tragedy, a time of loss. But whose reality is right, whose reality is wrong? Neither is right nor wrong. It's just what we experience, and they're both as valid. So let's hop onto 2021. What we saw.
I just want to add one more thing, that you and I tend to experience things before the collective does. And we weren't aware of that a few years ago, but we went through our own dismantling many years ago before others were experiencing it all together. So we had to do that and feel our grief of loss and everything else prior to 2020. So that's helped us get to 2020 and be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'd already experienced the whole dismantlement and breakdown previously to that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
So earlier this morning, I was given a word for each month. I received it from the future, from someone who knows what the future is, from someone who can experience time in all of its beautiful dimensions. Guides, spirits who are with each of us, but it's just a matter of allowing their knowledge to come through, divine knowledge. So for January, the word is chaos. And what I felt with that word was, although the predatory class, and I say predatory not as a derision, I say it as an active choice to predate, to be a predator. The predatory class, January was their solid attempt to create another notch in the food chain, and accepted we are the apex predators and we feed on everything below us. And however, sometime in December, I also felt that we had crossed a bridge or through a portal where lies no longer work. So January was really chaotic because they were throwing every single attempt to create that extra notch in the food chain, and it backfired because we were seeing it so one after another. People started to realize what was going on. So what did you experience in January?
Well, I think that what you're saying too is just like every month kind of encapsulates a certain portion of the full year too. So chaos in January, oh my gosh. I mean, you have, I won't get into elections or anything like that, but it was a big flexing of a muscle. We had supposedly a new time, a new year. Everyone was supposedly happier, but it was the time where then things doubled down. It was every little hand that was shown, could be shown, was shown by the predatory class. And it took a little bit of time. It took a little bit of, I would say, heartbreak and heartache for some, but this was the beginning of a big awakening against predation and against the structures and powers that were put in place. And a realization, too, that many people hadn't quite gotten it yet at this point, but this was a tipping point for them. It was a huge tipping point. And of course, for us, people started coming to us and talking to us about these things too. And what do you think of this? I know that you've got a few edge types of thoughts, and you don't necessarily ascribe to any sort of philosophy, one side or another, in this geopolitical world. And it was always funny because I would always steer them away from it. I would say, you're right. And let's talk about what's beyond that world that you're seeing right now. Let's really talk about the spiritual forces that are underlying it. And through that spiritual forces underlying it, people were starting to wake up to that portion of it. I think in January, that chaos was a tangible thing, not just in this physical world, but it was a spiritual underlying situation.
Yeah. It can be beautiful in the dismantling of what is ready to just fly off, be disconnected. And it might feel painful while things are leaving, but that's the opportunity to feel that pain. And after 2020, people were more open to feeling pain, whereas prior to it, they were suppressing grief and many feelings, which the earth tried to warn us, can you feel your grief so that I don't have to? In one of those flooding, enormous flooding seasons. I don't remember when that was, but that was a really loud message. And so we got to 2020 where we were kind of forced to feel our feelings. And the beauty of confinement, as any creative person knows, having boundaries in which to create makes that space even more, there's more possibility in that confined space to be even more creative. And so what we started to find out in that chaos, people started to just feel more ability to be outside of the chaos.
It became a breaking of the addiction.
Mm-hmm.
It was a realization that, wow, I am like really addicted to this made up world and all the crazy making that
The world is really made up. It's just, yeah. You think this right here is make believe? The world. Yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead.
So it wasn't, yeah. So of course we're not as far make believe and crazy as what could be stirred up over there. I mean, look at what's happened. I mean, New Year's Day for many people was supposed to be a day of joy, but then they look back at the the ball drop in Times Square and all of that, and like how depressing it was. This is what we've become. Like that was the reflection on New Year's Day 2021. This is what we are. I mean, that was a really good point for people to feel. They're like, wow, this is pretty chaotic now already. I feel this right away. This is who we are. This is who we are now. This is who we're supposed to be right now. So that realization was beautiful. And people are like coming to me now, it's the 2022, saying that feeling that I had the first day of 2021 really did set the stage for me to realize that there was an addictive quality to what was being put in front of me daily. That I was an addict, my neighbor was an addict, we were all under this sort of illusionary, I don't know, spell or, yeah, so that's the chaos of the predatory class. This is one of their tactics, and even a spiritual tactic to actually put us down into that depression, anxiety, crazy making, to keep us on that edge, because that's where they thrived. And like people started saying, what if I didn't have to live there? You know?
Yeah.
So
There's a lot of no thank you in January.
yeah, no thank yous all the time. And so they kept building throughout the year. I really love that.
Yeah.
So what did you have for February?
Grief. Seeing all of the lies that we had been living in and believing, and the world that we thought was, it was a loss to many. And they had to feel that loss, or without feeling it, it would just continue. And now that in February that they couldn't pretend anymore, that it had to be the way it was being designed for us. Now that they could see that that was the case, they had to feel all the ways that we had encouraged and promoted and supported, financed, funded us, sometimes angrily insisted that it had to be that way. They had to feel the loss of all of those feelings of knowing and power and certainty, and realize that where we were going was an unknown.
Anytime you step out of that confines of a little bit of addictive behavior, addictive beliefs, and you sit in sort of a space of calm for a while, then you come back out of that to look at the world around you, you realize how much your perception and the world are so dissonant, and that does create a lot of grief, because you have to let that world pass away.
And yourself.
And yourself through that world.
Mm-hmm. Who you were.
Who your friends were.
Your identity, yeah.
Yeah, everything tied to your identity. Yourself, your friends, your environment. Your political beliefs, your attachments, maybe even relationships.
Maybe your finances, your pension, your business,
Yeah.
your job,
Hmm.
your health care.
Your
Well,
health.
your not your health care, but your insurance, which is a very different thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So letting that fall behind and not knowing what steps to take can be really grieving for many. And that was, yeah, talk about going from chaos to grief. But for many folks, I think it was the first time in a long time that they actually let themselves grieve. Like you said, the world was already grieving for us because we wouldn't allow ourselves to do it. We kept like putting it off and putting it off. And let's fix this one thing here first. Let's manipulate something else first before we actually grieve a planet or we grieve um, the beauty that we're destroying.
Yeah.
We finally get to cry it out.
Because what covers over grief is fear, and what covers over fear is anger. So January, just triggered all the anger, even though it was much of it was already coming to the surface, which was great. It's great to have clear rage to deal with rather than a suppressed and denied rage.
Yeah.
So getting down to grief was a beautiful gift for humanity.
Yeah. Thank you,
So,
Emma, for joining us. Hi, Emma. So, um,
um, yeah, so February is a beautiful gift, even though many didn't feel good during February.
tears water a bunch of seeds.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah. So March, from grief, we moved on to acceptance. And that's the beauty of grief, is because now you have cleared so much out of your system that you can accept where you are right now.
A lot of folks had to deal with their shame, and I'm glad that the shame portion of that was brief to allow March and acceptance to come through. So, yeah, then it's the acceptance phase is like it's another pause, I think, where you're just kind of waiting for some sort of divine message. And the other drawback to acceptance was that I think for a little bit, for a brief moment, many folks were like wondering if their change in consciousness would like actually reflect the change in consciousness of governments, industries, business, X, all that other stuff, which it didn't. So, but they did recognize that kind of right away. But that was part of that pause of acceptance. It's like, okay, the world is totally changed. I've gone through and I've grieved. I've been allowed to grieve. Now I feel, yeah, this is the way it is now. And I'm here to live and sit with that. So, that's the funny thing about the predatory classes that they actually for a while have known how to monitor human behavior and the human psyche and how to influence, how to ride waves. They've had like 100-year plans in place before we had 5-year, 10-year, 1-year plans in place. Through us seeing that acceptance, you and I, Rita, we actually started enacting our own acceptance of our own place being farther in the future to where we actually started accelerating our knowledge, our abilities, and we actually started catching up to that technological and psychological warfare in the good tactic ways that they were meant to be. So we started catching up. It took us a little while, but this March was also a turning point for us through this acceptance point where my dreams got wickedly wild more than ever before. But I also feel like at that time I gained much more of an acceptance of my gifts, of what I could do, how I had learned so much more, and that we were getting closer. You and I were getting closer to matching up to, well, we've said it before, maybe I'm foreshadowing to this great reset.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, March we really had to claim and own the ability to generate a greater reset. And with all of that cleared out in February, all that grief and what it detoxed from our collective system, we were more able to accept and notice the evidence of our human abilities. And March is when we started to really see others willing to learn how to master the art of being human fully, and all the possibilities that a person can be and have and create just by fully accepting your humanity and the unique gifts that we're each given. So that's also, acceptance isn't just, oh, I accept that I've been addicted and I've been I have all this shame. And part of that reason that moved through quickly is because everybody had that. So we could all accept, okay, you were, way off. You were raging at various things, and so was I. So what are you going to do? None of us had to feel less than. And so we could move into our beauty of being human, which led us to what you were referring to as a technology that was always available to us. We were just decided to be closed off to it.
yeah, part of that whole side of predation is that coming emergence of AI technology and transhumanism, but yet we don't need to go there.
We don't need machine parts in us. We've already got it.
We can actually do much more when we fully are human than what any sort of added nanobot technology, transhumanist AI agenda could ever achieve.
Right. And by the beginning of 2021, I had already not seen a doctor for 10 years. So I was relieved of many worries that others could still feel.
Yeah, and I still hadn't taken any antibiotics at the end of.
Oh, and Scott's touching on something that someone doesn't want us to hear. So he freezes whenever he gets a little too far into revealing things. Oh, there he is. He said antibiotics. So we'll move on to April, and Scott will catch up. There he is.
As soon as I talked about
Mm-hmm.
my ability not to be on any sort of antibiotics, vaccines, whatever,
Yep.
boom. So, yeah, keep coming.
Yes, we were both in our 50s, still are both in our 50s, and not on any medications whatsoever.
I'm just amazed.
And yeah, it's just a perfect example. Okay, we know what this is, so we don't need to be fretting about it.
No, we just say to those predation powers who want to silence us, is that all you've got? So, the message is out. It's pretty clear.
Yeah.
We don't even have to speak it. The folks who've been watching, listening, even for years who are listening, this is the same message we've put out. So, yeah. So what if you can censor me when I tell you that I've been 26 years antibiotic free and my last vaccination was at age 8? Go ahead and censor me. Everyone knows it. So.
Okay, April.
All right, that's enough.
April is a bit of a regression because that was a lot those first 3 months. It's kind of normal to just kind of, whoa, I've got a lot to integrate here, process and integrate. And in feeling that, there was a little acting out, and it was okay. You and I didn't get worked up and feel like, oh no, it's not working. It's gonna go downhill after all. No, it was just the natural progression of life and beauty and where things go. So what did you witness with people regressing a little bit?
Well, it was interesting. They were given more freedoms on one side of the aisle here around April. So they were like loosened up. And it was a quick little step back into that other world. We did all the spiritual work and all this great stuff, realized our grief, and then all of a sudden we got a few little nuggets from the other world over there. And so that kind of like got people back into, I mean, every good addict knows they're going to relapse and come back. So that's what I witnessed. You're starting to see the interplay. You really are starting to see the interplay this month between they're trying, but the predatory class now for once is trying to catch up. So I am really watching April with glee because, yeah, it appeared that people were kind of like falling back into that whole thing, but it was just a minor thing. And I do realize that this was the time where the predator class was like, oh, we got a problem. We have to do this. So, and that's what caused this little backlash, and they're like, oh, thank goodness, I think we've got them again. So they can be our sheep again. They can be the cattle. They can be
source.
The food source again, because we've given them, we've turned back the dials. We've given them more freedoms. We've told them they were all in this together, and that, wow, we can look back with such pride. So that was the point. They kind of like felt like they were making their grand step and their grand arrival again. And yeah, there was a little bit of backlash, as to be expected. But we knew from the future that this was very temporary. And I could actually see that the predatory class was, in fact, it was the first time for a while that they were having to catch up a little bit.
That felt good.
It felt really good.
Yeah. Talk about acceptance. I can accept that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. We regressed.
Yeah.
And the beauty of being able to move around in time is that we can plan and respond to what we know is likely coming. So it's not a shock. It doesn't send us into trauma. And so we weren't traumatized by this new appearance of a higher power that was not divine, because we had our connection to the actual divine higher power.
Everyone needed to be tested. I mean, this was, you come out of this grief and acceptance point, you're going to be tested. Everyone needed to be tested.
Do you really want to be fully human and fully sovereign and fully self-responsible? That's all April was. Just making sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So with that, it revealed a lot of things, sort of, oh yeah, this is how awful it felt. I'm not going back to that. So in May, we really chose to integrate all of the things we had learned, especially in 2020, especially in the first few months of this year, 2021. In May, we got on board as a species, as a human race, to really integrate and decide that we were going to learn how all of this stuff really works.
Yeah. I'm glad that it didn't take very long for things to step up. And you wondered after April when you saw all of this stuff happening, but it didn't take very long. And actually, there were some lightning rods everywhere. And it didn't take millions of lightning rods to actually let the collective progress to, okay, we are now at this point where we really have to be this self-responsible in all of this.
Because we can be. We're
right.
not controlled anymore.
Yeah. But I think that, again, the predators thought that it would take hundreds, if not thousands, of people. No. 10 or 12 people with the right kind of voices and the right kind of way of speaking about it, I believe,
and just being
shifted so many of us. And yeah, it's a gift to be yourself responsible, and it's a gift to change ourselves first. Wow. Oh my gosh. You mean I get to be a sovereign being? It's not, oh, I have to be a sovereign being now. No, it's like, get to be this free sovereign being that makes my own choices.
Yeah. And so many new choices were being made in May. And all of those years of power struggles and trying to gain control, even in your, close relationships, and we learned what real control is by watching the evidence of your choice. And that was one of the beauties that came just before 2021, is that logical conclusions and action I take leads to a logical conclusion now. And that's just like, people are feeling the thrill of that again and realizing they missed it so much. And for younger people, it's a whole new thing. And it's just, people are marveling every day. And that's so much fun. It's like living with an entire world of toddlers in their wonder and exploration.
It's really good to see. Yeah, none of it came with guarantees or lumps of cash or lumps of currency or security or all those artificial things that people used to say, well, I'll do this if I get that. So it was refreshing to start seeing there wasn't a negotiation. People were stepping out in like even in small ways, some in big ways, some in moderate ways. I was like, wow, I get to choose this? I get to like wow, face the actual logical conclusions to my actions now. And those can be very good. But it was also like people didn't they already saw, oh my gosh, like look at what is coming what was coming behind them. Yeah, people started look what's coming behind us. There's a big old train that wants to catch up to us. So if I don't necessarily well, I don't want to say that. No, I'm not gonna even like I'm cutting off that argument. Now's as good a time as any for me to realize that I can outrun this train based on logical and
Easily outrun a train.
yeah, things that I can do for myself and choose for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. And so June was all about learning. Because we had integrated quite a lot, more than we even thought was possible. And so it was a continuation of really choosing to learn new things and new ways and new ideas about how the world could be and how each of us could be, where it seemed to have been prescribed before. We all understood, most of us understood, that we could decide what we wanted to be and how we wanted to be, and to check in with our unique gifts, because that would only fuel and expand who we wanted to be.
And I think people also realize that, oh wow, I was confined in the past. And oh my gosh, really throughout all that time, I gained an awareness of technology now that allows me to learn easily. Even though I was kind of forced upon me the year before. So a lot of these things did happen. I liked it when people started learning underground.
Yeah.
Without any sort of apology or mention of it. There was a really great community of folks that I started meeting who were willing to just covertly learn these things underground. There were a few, but there were a few.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really fun. June was great. And as we learned, July was all about experimentation. Because how do you learn more quickly than just experimenting? And there was so much less fear about taking the risk in an experiment to see what the result was going to be, because the result was always so informative. And failure almost became a concept that didn't exist anymore. You can't fail if you're learning something. And that tendency to just keep doing the same thing again and again, even though it resulted in something that you didn't want and didn't like and hated and complained about and ruined your health, that just stopped. Because we knew we could experiment and find a better way. And it didn't have to come all at once. It could be a small step and then another experiment, and then another step.
Do you remember when we started experimenting about, and I showed this to one other person, and I don't know if you did or not, but we started experimenting with really sort of, I wouldn't call it tempting, but I would call it showing our hand to the predatory class, where we just psychically experimented with that.
Hmm.
And how we saw the results quickly from the roaring hand of predation trying to creep in almost immediately. That was a very telling experiment for me, and I did share that in July with folks, and I think, as people come along, they learn at their own pace, they experiment at their own pace, but for us it was just supreme evidence that our experiments were actually causing an impact. We got to be able to create a reaction out of just sending a psychic thought. That was a fun experiment.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I think. That was a very interesting point of
because everyone started to really understand then how many psychic thoughts we had been sending unconsciously, consciously, and that the person had been receiving it always for all of our existence. That had been happening. And so now we were faced with the responsibility of, oh my God, they actually felt that. Oh, that's wonderful and that's awful, depending on what we were sending.
But it leveled it. It's like, this is real. Wow, this experiment showed us this is real.
Yeah. And feeling it coming at us. How many, holy moly, every day, every minute, feeling what was not us, what's not me, and what is me. And that's really when the cellular health started to improve for humanity. That was the beginning. And in such an interesting and perfect way, that collective cellular health, the cells of everybody started to release the toxins that had built up. And that led to quite a lot of interesting things and resembling so much of what happens when a person has a virus. And so we were ridding ourselves, the human condition was ridding itself of viral impact.
It was also ridding itself of viral psychic attacks. Step by step, a little bit at a time. But as we've also learned, we learned this in years past, that once we picked up on something, our psychic experiments didn't just affect us. As we've seen in the past, we saw evidence of the past. Once we picked up something too, or once someone else in the, who is willing to go out on these thought experiments picked something up, it seemed like the collective kind of comes along fairly quickly. So all we have to do is put out a thought, do an experiment, and then all of a sudden we know these camps of people are starting to speak the same thing, say the same things. And so that experiment also said that, okay, all of humanity who is tapped in psychically is also connected. And so when one of us makes a positive connection or a connection with an experiment and actually heals a portion, we actually heal a portion of the whole.
Yeah. So quantum physics, the science of quantum physics, just exploded in 2021. Yeah, that was fun. So August, another little setback, it was just a little too much, little distrust that this could actually be real. Everything we just talked about, that was wild for everyone. And the experiments, they got a little bit, they went a little towards the dark to see, okay, what happens when I shoot this anger at this other person? Let's just see what happens. And a little bit of that predatory power wanting, desire for power, it had to happen so that people could see and then feel the remorse and the repentance. We got really familiar with repentance in August. And so that was perfect.
And rejection.
Yeah. Because everyone could see actually what they were rejecting. And people who had a habit of rejecting prior to this could see that maybe they were projecting something onto someone so they could reject them and feel safe.
And I'm glad that we actually recognize that, and we'd actually lived through that, and recognized that years ago. This is the story of rejection. I'll put something on someone else. So it's a little bit of their responsibility. I have to talk about my issue. I have to talk about my issue with Rita so that she can give me advice, and so that I don't have to take responsibility for myself when I don't do it. And I can just blame her. So, and this is a pattern that we saw years back. This was a general pattern. So, the little relapse of that happening, and as people learned, though, I was glad that some people were like, "Oh, am I doing that again?" So, and we're like, "Yeah."
Yeah. Because lies don't work anymore. That thing that you're projecting out towards someone just immediately comes back. So it's a little bit of selfishness in a way. You don't like what comes back anymore. So any way it gets us there, I'm okay with.
Yeah, well, and send out the scary, you'll probably get the scary. So that's good information.
Yeah.
That's incredibly good information.
Yeah.
So, of course, you can blame me if you like. You can reject me or say, "Oh, I don't want to take my own responsibility," or "That's just too much now." I think that is what a lot of folks first experience. Like, "Oh, humanity shouldn't be trusted with all these things that we're learning now," and so that's a little too much. So I'm going to step back and just go back to this other way where I feel safe.
And it really highlighted for the people who had still been holding back. It really made the energy and everything that was going on in August really just brought that distrust to the surface, and the people who hadn't gotten on board yet noticed, oh, well, I really am been trying to protect myself for probably my whole life, and putting things on other people so that I can reject them really is a convenient way to just protect myself from getting close to anyone or from being seen. Woof. Being seen.
From feeling love.
For feeling love, yeah. And so those people started to tiptoe out of their protective barriers and going in and out. So that was really just a wonderful time. And we could just celebrate that distrust coming to the surface.
That's amazing. We've come a little ways where we can say we celebrated this distrust coming to the surface in August.
Yeah. Yeah, because when you allow, you can see the connecting the dots, the ripple effect outwards and where it can go. Yeah, August was great because then it led to September full of courage. Those people who came out from their protective barriers and their life that they had created perfectly for themselves, and you had to fit in it if you were going to be anywhere near them. They started to have more courage to allow other people to be whoever they were, because we were all being far more beautiful than we had been before.
I'm searching for the best example of courage. I don't want to get into the darker sides of courage. People had allowed themselves to distrust and judge. Got a little tired of that. It's exhausting. It's
great when people get sick of themselves. That's a wonderful thing.
and these are logical steps that people have to take anyway, to kind of like churn the soul that wants to expose itself. And then once they realize, you mean I had to go through that? Oh, I had to go through that. Oh, I had to go through that. Well, I got through that. And so that was a nice way to collect this courage of, okay, I got through that. Look at all the steps that I have behind me. Look at all this evidence. And yeah, there were some scary points, but I got through this, and I'm better for seeing that. And so that's when people were like, all right, now that we've had our little learning points, now that we've had our little setbacks, let's get to business. And that courage was a real driver, because we still had this predatory system. Here it is August, and you could see some creeping in. You could see some creeping in of like the same tactics over and over and over. And people were like, you provided such knowledge. They were actually like grateful. They're like, thank you. I'm grateful for this. But you don't know how much courage I have amassed. So people had to start discerning where they were going to put that energy of courageousness into. That was really wonderful. For some, it was as simple as speaking out when they hadn't. For others, it was like, I'm gonna put out art that I've wanted and kept inside me forever. Or I am really going to figure out what is in this psychic interdimensional being of me, because I'm courageous enough to do it. And for others, it was like a stepping out, a walking out, a stepping away from like a life system that they had put themselves in. So it was very interesting. Courage can be so different for everyone individually, but you could really feel, I could feel at least, this collective sense of, oh, that's courageous. I kept saying that. That's courageous. Because I was also wondering what's going to happen next. What's going to happen after all of this? What did you experience with courage?
There were subtle things, just like, I'm going to have the courage to not eat this thing that I have been for years, and to just see how I feel afterwards. And if I want to eat it tomorrow, I will. But then tomorrow came, I'm going to have the courage to not eat it again and see if I have the same feeling. So there were subtle ways of being courageous. And then I just noticed everyone speaking their mind a little bit more, but owning it. Not in a way that was like, this is my opinion and you have to accept that this is my opinion. This is my truth and I'm going to speak it. It was just realness. Realness became more apparent and pervasive. So that was how I really saw courage happening in September.
There was a break in the neurolinguistic programming. People didn't necessarily parrot what the systems that be were telling them to parrot.
Mm-hmm.
People are courageous enough to actually formulate and articulate their own way of being and actually convert that into their language that was apart from what this other class was like telling them to say and do, and through all the mechanisms that they used, flatten the curve, we're in this together. People broke out of that with this courageousness and the ability, like you said, to kind of speak their mind and own it for themselves. Because
it was coming from a place of actually feeling themselves for the first time ever. So their information was coming from within and from a connection to divinity rather than a broadcast. And a whole different kind of broadcast was going on.
Broadcast.
Yeah. Yeah. So then October led to lots of small victories. And I have to just say, when I wrote victories, I actually started to write Victoria. And I just felt that there's some victory having to do with the Queen.
And there's also Victoria, British Columbia.
Mm-hmm. Victoria in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
There's many Victorias. Yeah.
Yeah.
It felt like the Queen when I wrote it. Like was something specific that did happen to the Queen in October, and having to do with victories. And people, after all of that courage, really starting to trust those small victories and what a small victory can lead to a huge change, a huge expansion. But because we started to trust that there was going to be another small victory after that. And things were so different now in October from the beginning of the year. It was, we were getting used to, and we weren't afraid of change anymore. We were starting to love change because that's what being alive is.
Yeah. And these victories weren't just handed to us out of a want to extend a reach of predation. Oh, we'll give you this victory, come back to us. It wasn't that at all. Almost in spite of everything. It was that feeling of, we're just going to give them this, I guess. It was true, and even though they were small and they were, but they were ours. And also, like, that was kind of like an end to victimhood. Having enough small victories kind of really, for some folks, just shattered their victim mentalities.
Yeah, wasn't that fabulous?
That was really good.
You want a victory? Make one.
Yeah.
Yeah, the opposite of victory is victim.
They didn't have to define themselves out of a struggle anymore. That was a good thing too. With the victories that came, we didn't have to we know that this darker forces exist. We know there's a battle happening. We know that there is a scale tipping on control and humanity, predation, thriving, evil, and love. We know that those things are happening, but we don't have to now be victimized by it. We understand our role. We understand our effect. We see victories happening. We take responsibility for the victories. We take responsibility for ourselves. We change ourselves through these victories. And we're not defining ourselves as victims of this anymore, which I think was a huge victory in itself, too, if you want to claim small victories out of those small victories, is that for many, they realize I don't have to, I can recognize this battle. I don't have to attach myself to it as a victim. That was a huge victory in those small victories.
Yeah. And victimhood going away had a lot to do with the fact that predation was falling apart as well. We were just saying no, we weren't having it anymore. So you can't be a victim if there aren't any predators.
And even if they are out there, once you choose not to be a victim, that is the start of the crumbling of predation.
Yeah.
That's the very start. And it does. It's like comes from our own self-responsibility of like claiming that we are no longer victims. They can actually take away whatever they wish to take away. Because if we're not victims, we know that there are portions of this interdimensional self that they will never reach. So there's no reason to feel like you're falling victim.
Yeah. Sometime back in 2020, someone who didn't know me very well, just out of the blue, just looked at me and said, you know, you would do really well in prison. And I said, you're right. You know, it wasn't as scary. Oh my God, how can you say that? It wasn't anything like that. It was like, yeah, you can find me to that degree and I am taking off. Because I don't have to be where you put me.
And that is such a beginning. We're really not there where you think you've put us. And that's something to use.
Yeah. Yeah. We can let you believe that we are. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Enjoy.
It's just the centuries of them coming from like a darkness of coming forward and making us believe that they are in a place that they really are not. So, well, here it is now. We're no longer victims, and you can believe that you've put us in a place that makes you feel safe, that makes you and your control feel safe and secure. But we'll allow you to believe that, but we are nowhere in that space.
Yeah.
When people come to that, that's when victories turn over victories, and like you said, predation begins to crack and crumble.
And then we were left open to explore
Mm.
all through November. Lots of exploration. People could feel that there were avenues open, new places to go and explore that had nothing to do with buying a plane ticket.
Oh my gosh. Remote viewing was the thing.
Mm-hmm. And still is.
Yeah.
But it began in November. And we had already moved on to bilocation.
Oh. Well, and that's the logical advantage. Like,
Yeah.
we're not really where you think we are.
Yeah.
So, of course, we're somewhere else and we're here.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I like it that remote viewing became something tangible for folks. This exploration, new places. Yeah, some people did change their environments and explore those things, but like the environments within the quantum realms and us as interdimensional beings, we could actually like travel wherever we wanted to first, remotely, interdimensionally, and then decide, okay, well, I've already been there. Is this where I want to go?
Yeah.
Or do I want to explore even more? New universes happen.
Mm-hmm. Where do I go and my health improves? There's so many things to explore when you stop being just physical and paradoxically being fully physical, because our physical bodies have so many signals and so much knowledge to give us. So we really encouraged everyone in 2021 to pay attention to every single signal from your own physical body, because it will lead you outside of this physical world.
What a paradox. Stay in your physical body, which we actually know is just made up of energy, and our portions of our cells disappear and reappear constantly. So yeah, there's a tangible physicalness to us, but we know that as sure as we exist here, our cells are somewhere else constantly.
Yeah.
For some, that became a tangible thing. Well, and for me, I got even better at that trusting. And as I explored and had some remote viewing experiences, I got better in trusting that my cells and my atoms and those particulates that would vanish and reappear and disappear knew where they needed to go to heal, to bring back information to me, to allow this remote being to go where it needed to go.
And who was there when you went there, ready to help?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And as my cells and my body and my all of this improved, so did many others, because of course we're all collectively on this grid of sorts. This grid that's in the physical, but in the interdimensional that we can't see through the eyes here, so we have to go there to get the information.
And everybody is responding to everyone else. So changing your own physical makeup can ripple outwards to start others becoming more healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Cells knowing that they can regenerate. Oh, okay, I'll do that.
Yeah. And also like cells knowing like what they needed in the time and bringing back information that would actually affect us in better ways rather than just information that we can like say, oh, and go through our old patterns again of addicting and not taking responsibility. We're done with that. So
That's what we're doing right now. We're affecting January cells.
Yeah.
From November.
I'm not even going to track that right now.
Yep.
I'm trusting it.
I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah, just trusting it. So, we'll get into the whole quantum entanglement, which actually comes first. Is this future destination? Did it occur first?
And then science became about feeling. Do you feel that that's correct? Okay, if you really want to, go prove it mathematically. So that became fun for scientists. And so many formulas have come forward in 2021. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And the funding is clean and pure.
Yeah.
Because everybody's saying no thanks to darkness. Because if I figured out this formula that we actually can travel without taking our physical bodies with us, I definitely want it used for good. I am going to be responsible for this. Because we all know now it's transparent when anyone's intention is for evil. So there's no point.
Yeah, and it's almost like as our cells and everything come back to us, we heal, our cells get new information. It provides now there's almost an immediate discernment. It's like there's a different tinge of color to like anything of evil. I don't know, or it's a feeling.
Ugly, murky, smelly color.
Yeah, it's immediate. It's a feeling. It's not. We don't have to take minutes or hours to try and figure things out. Like, oh, this is what that feels like, because my cells know and vibrate at a resonance that can pick this up quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So that was yet another detachment away from predation.
Yeah. No need to battle. You just say no thanks.
Yeah.
Easy. So we got to December. This whole past month has been all about the rebirth of curiosity. Yeah. And whenever there is the slightest bit of curiosity, there is fun. Even if you're curious about something very serious, your cells feel a funness.
Mm-hmm.
Because it sparks a passion and an interest, and it just, as you're talking about vibrating, it starts vibrating at a higher level because it's activated. Curiosity is very activated and healthy.
It's almost like a renaissance. If I can project myself even in the future to 2023, I feel like there's almost a renaissance happening.
No, Scott, you can't do that.
Oh no, of course not. No, we've already
way too far.
So, heard that before.
Just a joke.
So, but I see a renaissance happening anyway. It's this expansion of curiosity that I saw this last month starting to happen is just people are asking questions that have never been asked before, leading to different forms of cultural expression, different forms of music, different forms of art, different forms of, almost anything you can think of, because this curiosity is starting to become pervasive thinking, wow, if we are more than what we are, and our souls and our mind and our consciousness can travel wherever we want, of course we have more questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now's the time to ask them. And we're not asking these people over there anymore.
Mm.
We start asking, and sometimes we don't, who am I asking? Am I asking myself? Am I asking my quantum self? Who am I asking? And that's a curiosity too. And how people are asking more things about God and spirit, universe, the connectivity of it all. And I like this curiosity because it's so apart from feeling like you are a child who's asking taboo questions. It's not like that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think in the old times we were taught that if you're curious and you ask those questions are not allowed and they're taboo. And now it's a lot different. No one's thinking that it's taboo to ask questions. No one that we associate with anyway.
Mm-hmm. And even just curiosities in very small ways, just being actually curious about another person, really wanting to know how they're doing, what they're feeling, being curious about ourselves and how we're feeling. Yeah, you don't have to go far to spark something of curiosity, to connect with your garden. How are you feeling? To be really curious about your tomato. What's it feel like to ripen and turn red? Just curiosity everywhere.
And it's not about the whole mechanistic process, that mechanical curiosity that we thought that science, the way we saw science, was going to answer.
Mm-hmm.
We're okay being curious and not getting an answer right away.
Yeah, that led to exploration, experiments.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of play also.
Yeah. These things are very dangerous to those people.
Screw them.
I know.
Because this is just the natural way of being. Not that they aren't invited. They're definitely invited.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be a great logical conclusion? Okay, you've crumbled apart. Now you can come over and you're invited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's a place at the table. Yeah, that was we're seeing that book come out in vogue again. The Fifth Sacred Thing by Starhawk. It's coming into vogue again because people are courageous and they see this other system happening and crumbling. And how in that book there's always there's a place at the table for you. There's a place at the table for you, even if you destroy my body. And it's people are just seeing it's that kind of a renaissance. It's a renaissance of love. I'm curious
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness. I'm curious how much I can love.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious.
How many awful things can I forgive?
Yeah, and you wonder, is to be curious about forgiveness.
That makes 2022 really exciting.
rather than retribution.
Mm, what a useless thing.
Oh my gosh. That's an old tool. An old tool.
Punishment.
Um, and really we're all kind of now realizing we're on this journey as we get into forgiveness. And I'm probably going a little farther into 2022. We realize that we're actually training to be spirits.
An eternity of being a spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we recognize, but a lot of people don't quite see it yet. They're having fun. That's okay.
Yeah.
But we kind of realize that all of this is a huge training ground, and like, how are we learning to be spirits through the art of being fully human?
Mm-hmm. Because spirits are human.
We've always been spirits.
Mm-hmm. And so shall we always be.
Infinite.
Yeah. Certainly souls. Yeah, so 2021 was, wow.
Quite a year.
Yeah, quite a year. And it was so funny to watch sort of a collective amnesia. People feeling like, yeah, I always knew I could do this. I just, yeah, this was always a thing. Just kind of forgetting what they believed before. No, I didn't. No, that's nonsense. I never believed that.
Yeah. And it's okay. There's no room for remorse or I'm sorry's or whatever. We've already kind of moved beyond it anyway. So if we've just have forgiveness, and really the human race needs to take credit for itself and its growth.
Yeah.
Why not? And just say, yeah, I always knew this. Yeah.
Yeah. Your cells did.
Mm-hmm.
Your guides did.
So there's no reason to say, oh my gosh, how can they say that now? Look at all the things they used to be. Well, there's beauty.
Mm-hmm.
Say it now and say it clear. I think it's just, don't ever if the collective wakes up, I'm not going to be the first person to knock them down again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why would you want to kick the legs out? That's a tool that we learned.
Yeah.
From the other forces.
Mm-hmm. No, it's just something to be curious about and enjoy.
Even if you want to laugh about it.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yep. I was feeling very encouraged at the beginning of this year.
Yeah. Me too.
Okay.
Well, we have a couple of people who are watching, and I don't know who they are.
Okay.
If we've been on here for an hour and a half, I know.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there's anybody. We'll just take a little moment if either of the folks who are watching wants to ask a question.
Yes, and while we're waiting for more guidance in 2021, we have this Soul Circle calendar.
What I think people should do with that Soul Circle calendar is to actually project themselves into the future and start writing down things that happened on certain days, because every day is blank. We don't even have holidays in there.
Mm-hmm.
So I plan to do that with my own calendar, is to I want to write down your months. I'll go back to this video, but I actually want to like write down specific dates that come to me psychically and say, Oh yeah, I remember on November 24th. That was this day. Let's just
Mm-hmm.
write it there before it happens, and just I think it'd be a great experience.
Yeah,
Experiment.
that is good. I
Yeah,
like it.
yeah. Since you've got the whole year in front of you,
Mm-hmm.
go there, flip it over from December at the very end, and start writing in reverse. So,
Yeah.
so any questions want to come across? We'll just give it a little more time, maybe a minute. And I'm just going to really quickly switch between. I saw some comments from Facebook, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't see any questions coming through. What else do we have in store? I don't want to like toot our horn. Of course, we have meditations that we'll put out
Yeah.
for 2021. That'll be a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
The circles are going to be everywhere. And
Yeah. Scott has many plans for the circles.
yeah, we have many plans. So, if you have a place that you want to see those circles, get in touch with us. You know, put a note on our Facebook page, comment on us, or send it to Rita at cosmicfixer.biz. No, actually, Rita at circularsoul.biz. Oh my gosh, that's old. Maybe it's future. I don't know.
Yeah.
So leave a comment. Rita at circularsoul.biz. If you have any ideas, anything that you want to share, where you want to see things go, or just questions, requests, leave comments later. Watch this later, and we'll answer your questions, comments as they come across. So,
Okay. This
all
is
right.
good. Very useful for us, for
Happy
sure.
New Year. Good.
Okay. Thank you,
Happy New Year,
Scott.
everyone. Thank
Yeah.
you, Rita. Take care.